Soviet officials opened the court to Western reporters and cameras in sharp contrast to the way trials are usually held here. Clearly, the Russians feel the publicity can serve a purpose, both as a warning to would-be drug smugglers and as a demonstration that Soviet courts can be just. The three Americans pleaded guilty, then began to tell their story. They told of a plan to smuggle 63 pounds of heroin from Malaysia to Western Europe, the drugs hidden in false-bottom suitcases. In charge of the operation, they said, was a small group of Chinese men. Interesting testimony here because Kremlin propaganda says the Chinese play a major role in world drug traffic. Moscow was just a transit point, a place to change planes. The Americans mistakenly believed that as transit passengers, they would not be searched. Their motives were money, a share of the drugs, and in the case of 31-year-old Paul Brower of Las Vegas, adventure. I thought it would be exciting, he said, like a Hollywood movie.
Court officials say the trial will take one more day to complete. Maximum sentence for each of the Americans is 10 years in a Soviet prison camp. Richard Roth, CBS News, Moscow. The trial has continued despite the Americans' guilty pleas because under the Soviet system, admission of guilt is just another piece of evidence. The prosecutor still has the obligation to prove the charges listed in the indictment, and that has been one reason for the lengthy court procedure.
Customs officials have testified the Americans were caught during a routine check at Moscow airport. But as the case appeared to be drawing to a close, a Soviet expert due to testify on the mental fitness of defendant Gerald Amster said she needed more time to study psychiatric records supplied by American hospitals. As the judge was about to call a recess, Amster asked to be heard. He spoke vaguely of a death threat, apparently made by Chinese men who had hired the Americans as drug couriers. During their 2 months in jail here, the defendants have been allowed occasional meetings with American diplomats. But since the start of the trial, they have been isolated from all foreigners. The isolation ended for a moment yesterday during a break in the proceedings. Richard Roth, CBS News, Moscow. 33-year-old Gerald Amster, an admitted drug addict, received the longest sentence, 8 years in a labor camp. Today, he thanked Soviet officials for what he called their humane treatment during his painful withdrawal from heroin. The court said it was Amster who drew the others into the smuggling conspiracy. For 26-year-old Dennis Byrne, also of New York, 7 years. And for 31-year-old Las Vegas building manager Paul Brower, the father of 4 small children, a first-time offender, the lightest sentence, 5 years. Judge Lev Mironov said it had been proved the 3 men knew what they were doing and were responsible for their actions last June when they stopped in Moscow en route from Malaysia to France and tried to carry 3 suitcases filled with heroin past airport customs officials. When the sentences were handed down today, Brower was the only man to comment, calling them fair, very fair. The 3 will likely serve their terms at a special prison camp south of here for foreigners only, a so-called corrective labor colony where conditions are said to be better than in regular Soviet prisons. Richard Roth, CBS News, Moscow.